Hi, I'm Lauren Gotting, new business director at URM Consulting. Back in January, we hosted a live Q&A session where Amarjit Sandhu, also known as AJ, URM's cybersecurity analyst and Cyber Essentials assessor, answered key questions about the Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. During the session, he covered everything from the scheme's requirements and recent changes all the way through to practical advice for certification. In this series, we're sharing a selection of his answers in short, bite-sized clips. We hope you find them useful. So, in terms of preparing for certification or preparing for going through the assessment, there's a few different things on here that I think, from your perspective, can be useful. Do you want to just run through these?
Yeah, so the first one, gain a thorough understanding of the requirements. Basically, just read all the documentation from NCSE, from IASME, use our blogs.
There is a requirement to actually read this document, right? You can't pass without reading it.
There is a question which says you have to state, yes, you have read it. So yeah, that is a requirement.
Yeah.
But you should really go further than just that one document and get a good idea of the requirements. Step on from that is to make sure you have good asset management in place. It's not a requirement for Cyber Essentials, but it's always good to have decent asset management, because if you don't know what you've got in place, how can you be sure it's up to date? In terms of a benefit for the business, you maybe have some laptops in a cupboard that have got licenses you've paid for but aren't being used. So it would help with things like that, where you're not wasting money on unnecessary licensing.
And again, with sort of implementing asset management, organisations don't necessarily need to go and buy a fancy tool, do they? They could use a spreadsheet. There's various different ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You could just have a sheet of paper where you've got a list of everything we have that you update monthly or weekly or whatever period you can manage. It's just a really useful way of knowing what you have, because it's quite common, especially for larger organizations, where they just don't know what devices are being connecting.
Absolutely. Excellent. And regular backups?
Yep, again, regular backups always good. If you are subject to an attack, it can get you back up and running fairly quickly. Again, not a requirement, but for day-to-day, the benefits from that are, if you're patching and something goes wrong with that patch, it's fairly easy to then restore the device and be up and running again to test again. If you don't have the backup, then obviously you're going to have to start from scratch.
Brilliant. Thanks, AJ. And then the last one there is basically saying just update things, right? And update them quickly.
Pretty much, yeah. So the current requirement for Cyber Essentials and the Plus is that you must fix any vulnerabilities that have a CVSS score of 7 or higher. If a patch is available, it must be applied. If the patch isn't released yet, then that's okay. That we'll consider that as compliant, because obviously if you're waiting for a patch, we can't blame you for that. There can be some instances where a vendor doesn't give you that information. So typically Apple would be one of the ones that fit that criteria. In those instances, you have to install all of their patches, and it must be done within 14 days.
Okay, so AJ, we've actually had a question drop in here. I think looking at this, I think it sort of ties up quite nicely with this. So this organisation in particular, they remediated vulnerabilities found on the scan when a new scan was run as part of the retest. Within 2 weeks, 2 weeks later, there were vulnerabilities that were deemed non-compliant. So what's happened there?
That can be from various reasons. It's not kind of one thing. The most common one is, for us, what we'll do when we're doing a scan is we'll place a filter which takes out any of the patches that fit within the 14-day window, because the requirement is it must be done in 14-day window. So let's say you did an assessment today and a patch was released today. It wouldn't be fair for us to fail you because the patch has just come out today. So it can be that you may have not put on a patch which has been filtered out, and then you've gone over the 14-day window, and then that's why it's showing up in the scan, because you should have fixed it.
Right, okay, because you're outside that 14-day patch window.
Because the requirement
okay.
is that you must be patching within 14 days. And if you do find patches outside of that, that means you're not fulfilling the requirement.
Yeah. And so as an assessor, we're not just going to retest what we found originally. It's no, if actually the times have changed now. Okay.
Because that's identifying an issue, because a major requirement for Cyber Essentials is that patching within 14 days. And if we're finding things afterwards, that's clearly an indicator that you're not fulfilling that. It can also be sometimes scanning tools can miss things on a first scan and then pick it up later. So that can happen. It can also be where you may have removed something thinking it's fine, and then you've logged back in and you see it on the device again. Typically that happens when you've got staged or provisioned applications. So you may delete something from an account, that account logs back on, and it's then reinstalled again. So the vulnerability comes back. Ideally, you want to be keeping an eye on your staged and provisioned software, making sure it's kept up to date.
Thank you, AJ, and thank you for watching. URM is hosting a free webinar in July where we'll be exploring the recent changes to the Cyber Essentials scheme and the Cyber Essentials Plus scheme in more detail. If you'd like to understand how these updates could affect your organisation and get further guidance from our experts, feel free to register at our website, urmconsulting.com. On the website, you'll have a chance to submit any questions ahead of time, and you'll of course be able to ask more during the live session, where no question will be left unanswered. If we don't hit them all on the live session, we'll reach out to address them one-to-one.